Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Firefighters Podcast. Now today on the podcast, we are celebrating LGBTQ History Month. Now this is February 2021 and we are joined by Cailin-Jo, Tyler, an operational firefighter in the UK, and Nicola, Hobbs, a returning guest, as we speak about different aspects of the LGBTQ plus community. This is a great conversation as we look at and explore some of our own experiences. Nicola and Cailin both share some personal references, some personal stories about their experiences with LGBTQ in their roles and also in their community at large. Some of those difficult conversations that they've had to have, how they navigate things in terms of language. You know, I really love the bit we talk about language in here, about the words you use, the connotations, the meanings, you know, the origins of them and what they might mean to people around you. I think there's some really powerful messages in here. So really proud, really glad to have the girls on the show. Really talking about what can be a challenging subject. And I know in today's day and age, people are worried about causing offense. And this is a conversation, hopefully, that will enlighten people and empower them to have these conversations and feel more accepting and curious about some of the people that make up the rich, diverse workforce that we have on our frontline emergency services. A big thanks once again to our long-term sponsor, Williamwood Watches, who bring us, of course, our Chivalrous Collection, Bronze Edition, Valiant Collection, and coming to 2021 from the 1st of March is their new Triumph Collection. Williamwood Watches has the vision to be the leading sustainable watch brand that upcycles rescue service materials for a new life, once forgotten, now reborn. People that wear these watches know they represent. They know that it is not just a timepiece. They're a statement of unity, respect, and bravery, which anyone wearing on our watch can proudly feel like they share that value with anyone else they see wearing it. It's like that badge of pride. It's like that symbol that you believe in something greater. If you want to become part of the Williamwood Watches family, head over to williamwoodwatches.com, where Johnny and the team have some beautiful pieces to share with us. Like I said, in March of this year, you will see the new Triumph Collection being launched. I had a sneak peek at it the other day. It's absolutely stunning. Hope you get in there and have a look. Only the top 100 existing customers who have been handpicked by Williamwood Watches get to have a glimpse at this before it goes on sale. So get over, have a look, get yourself registered, and check out some of the incredible stuff at williamwoodwatches.com. Massive shout out and thank you to one of our new sponsors, Venari Group UK. Quality builder of emergency vehicles, unrivaled degree of quality, passion, obsession for customer satisfaction, and they drive that British manufacturer to its fullest. We had Ollie as a guest on the podcast quite some time ago. I was up there not too long ago checking out their British built Z-Class air crash truck. I mean, that thing is pretty incredible. You know, I'm a big kid in a toy shop when I see some of the incredible vehicles that Venari is putting out there on the front line to keep all of our boys and girls in the emergency services safe and sound when they are out there helping people in the community, kicking ass and taking names. Thank you so much for coming back to the Firefighters Podcast. I really enjoyed my conversation with Nick and Cailin today, so I know you're going to enjoy it just as much. This conversation will hopefully empower people to explore these conversations and really become more familiar with and celebrate the diverse culture that we have and the diverse workforce that we have in the emergency services. And these people are there, out there every day supporting us on the front line, so it's important that we support them back. Thank you once again for taking time out your busy life to be here with us on the Firefighters Podcast. My conversation with Nick and Cailin is a really good one. I really enjoyed it, and I'm really thankful that we are given an opportunity to interact with people from this community and share what I feel is a really valuable subject. So thanks for coming back, thanks for listening in, and I will see you on the other side. Cailin and Nicola, welcome to the Firefighters Podcast. How are we doing?
Yeah, great, thank you.
Nicola, welcome back.
Yeah, thanks. Good to be back. Thanks for having us again. Appreciate it.
You are one of our top 5. Did you know? We're 60-something episodes in, and yours is one of the most listened to episodes.
Really? Well, let's make this one a
no pressure.
Equal one up there.
The sequel is always the hardest, so no,
Yeah.
I'm joking. But no, I think the subject we're going to discuss today resonates with so many people, and we've recently had some incredible, people on the Antarctic Fire Angels and stuff like that. So it's wonderful to see these characters stepping out and representing, because February is, well, in fact, Cailin, why don't you tell us why we're on the podcast today and what the episode's about?
So the episode is about LGBTQ History Month, where that came from, why we still need it.
So for all the complete Martians out there and people that are unfamiliar with it, what is LGBTQ?
So we have lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and then we have the plus, which we could then talk about binary, non-binary. Q is questioning, and some are now bringing up queer again. It's questioning, you know, you're kind of questioning what your sexual preference is. You don't want to label yourself.
That's kind of, because I love that it exists, but I also struggle with the fact that it exists. It's a bit like one of those things where you know it should be a thing, but it's also sad that it needs to be a thing. But it's wonderful that we've started to recognise it, and it's great to see it growing into that aspect. Like you say, the Q on the end, as much as people might think it's arbitrary, some people really struggle with the need to push themselves into boxes, and we even see at the end of applications and questionnaires and what it was historically a big part of a corporate structure or a service structure where we had to label people to get statistics up and things like that. Now, for those people that don't wish to be pushed into these proverbial boxes, it's wonderful that we're able to do that and we're recognising it. So when we talk about LGBTQ history, what specifically have been the big points that you've seen change? Because I think even the last 18 months, I've seen some massive changes, but LGBTQ has been going around for years now.
It has, and I think the biggest change I think recently is looking at the trans side of the LGBT. I think that's become more aware. Like we've got more awareness of Trans Week, Awareness Week, and I think more people are stepping out into that environment where they're feeling that society is more acceptable for them. Yeah. Not that it's exactly where we want it to be at all. We still have places that, you know, people don't feel like they can change their lives for how they see themselves, but it's definitely going in the right way, and we've got a lot to do. But it's interesting how it used to be LGB and now we've got the T, and it's been recognised in an open forum as well in the community, and I think that's really good to see, really progressive. But obviously we've got a long way to come. Like bisexual is still...
That was what I was going to ask about, because I don't necessarily see it as a grey area, but again, the problem is when you start recognising and representing people as we should do, when do we then stop? Because we've always seen things like bullying and harassment in the fire service has been given attention, which it always should have been, but we kind of feel like we're late to the game with recognising people's individuality and something like this. How do we know? You say we're not quite there. Is there even a there? I don't know if we're ever going to get to a place of pure equality. And I don't think that's a bad thing, because I think we should want to strive for more all the time. I think it's healthy to want to continue to explore it.
Yeah, I don't think we're quite there yet because of the culture of the fire service. I don't think we're quite there in all terms of, let's say, with gender, or even little things like even height, you know. You're coming from, they had to have a, you know...
Yes, I remember even in the police and stuff, it was like that.
And things are changing, and thankfully the culture is going the right way, because we have LGBTQ plus forums. Although people may not want to be labelled, it does give people a platform and an area and a community to concentrate on making that environment a lot better for people. So we're not there because the culture's not right. It's going in the right direction, but hopefully in the next 20 years, we won't have to be... It'd be great. Obviously, we're still going to celebrate LGBT History Month, because it's about the history of where we're going and what we're going to do next.
If you don't know where you've been, how do you know where you're going?
Exactly.
And also, we can so quickly take things for granted if we haven't remembered how tough it was for the people that have sort of gone first, if you will.
Yeah, and as we progress further, we realise the massive gaps we've got, like, for example, in schools, the massive kick-off that was around about having LGBT education in schools, and the amount of protests there were in some schools. So then that just steps you back, and you realise this is another little area that is not represented very well, and why not, and what do we have to do to tackle it? So it's always going to be something that we've got to strive towards, because new things will be opening up and we want to progress more, and that's when we know where our barriers are.
And it needs to be considered part of every new conversation, if you will, because like you said something about schools there, where we haven't, you've had some pushback, not you specifically, but there's been pushback around having that conversation. But there's never a conversation about having boy-girl locker rooms or boy-girl this or male-female style classes. It's just that this was never part of the initial conversation. So now it feels like people are being pushed into it, but you wouldn't say, you pushed us into male-female. Well, that wasn't a conversation then, so why is this conversation now? It's because that should be a conversation from the beginning. So like you say, every time we come into a new circumstance, a new opportunity in the fire service, a new anything that we find in our community, this should be an initial part of the default conversation, not like, these are the important things, and then, we might consider Black Lives Matter, we might consider LGBTQ, like it's an additional, like people are giving it lip service. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Which is challenging if you have to try and convince somebody that it's important. But the very fact that you guys are here today, you guys are here representing your own fire service, this is now something that isn't like a bolt on. It's not like, oh, we'll give it lip service and it's just something you can do on your own time if you want to. Services are now recognised. I mean, in your service, Cailin, you now have some sort of an equality lead. I don't want to get the terminology wrong, but they're now creating a position specifically for this, which is a massive recognition. You know, a paid, proper position to represent people like this.
Yeah, we have an equality officer in each station.
On every single station.
We should have. There's like, you know, we have PPE champions.
Yes.
And there is equality champions. Unfortunately, we haven't got many that have took up positions on stations.
Okay.
And this is another reason why we have LGBT History Month and the Pride Month, because we want to show people it's only because you support LGBT doesn't mean that you form part of LGBT.
Yes.
And don't be scared that people are going to label you. And I think that's one of our biggest barriers.
Yeah.
So if we got a PPE champion, and I know it worked really well at Melton and Eastern stations last year when we worked, and at Loughborough worked really well with them, because they had like a PPE champion that would say, I don't mind helping you out with this. I'm comfortable with who I am. I have my life. I have my wife, my kids. You know, I'm happy with who I am. But if I can make your life better, fabulous, I'll do that. And that's what we need.
I think it's just what people define they are aligning themselves with, because like you say, if people have certain connotations with the L, the G, the B, or whatever the number might be, but if you said, well, I'm aligning myself with equality, or I'm aligning myself with people not getting bullied,
I think the biggest thing about LGBTQ is just knowing about it. You don't have to necessarily be part of it. It's just knowing where we come from, the kind of things that are barriers for us, and just understanding that maybe being a straight white male or straight white female, you might not have the same barriers that we do and gone through the same things, and having to actually come out to your family, to people on station, to your friends, that's quite different from someone who's straight. You don't have to do that. You don't have to come out. There's no barriers there for you.
How do you help somebody understand that, though? Because unless, I mean, Nick, you know, we spoke before on the podcast about the experiences you'd had with talking to your parents, stuff like that. If people have never gone through these sorts of challenges, it's like convincing somebody what it feels like to be bullied and then encouraging them to just go for it. And they're like, oh, you don't get it. You don't get it.
Yeah.
How do you bridge that gap?
It's the power of speech and listening.
Okay.
So obviously I'm part of the LGBT community, but I really didn't know too much about trans because I'm not trans. I didn't have many people in my life that were out as trans. But then as my networks grew and I met some firefighters, you know, officers and all that had come out trans, and they were standing up and being really brave and telling their story. Yeah. It makes you sit back and listen and think, oh, how lucky am I to be able to be not facing what they're facing every day, every night, you know, having this massive weight on their shoulders. And I think listening to someone and having that empathy for them makes you think, okay, yeah, it's not what I thought it would be. Not that I had any preconceptions anyway, but if somebody else listening would be able to at least listen to what they're saying, take that on board and think, actually...
It almost recalibrates your expectations of, not like we should expect more or less from anybody, but appreciating that something we consider, when we talk about the nature-nurture analogy, something you consider to be very simple because of the way you were raised, because of environments you were encouraged to engage with, if you were encouraged to shut up when you're at home or open up and talk about things. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Or if you had somebody in your close network who was of a different gender or a different sexuality, then it'd be easier and more comfortable for you to discuss it. But we even get back to things such as, you know, domestic violence and different areas like that. If you've never experienced it, and then you're like, why is Nicola so quiet? Or why is John so this? Why is that? Oh, because they're a loser, or because they're this, or because they're... No, you haven't even got a clue. And that's not like, oh, how dare you? But it's just, have you asked them? Have you even tried to listen?
You don't even have to ask them. Sometimes it's just about educating yourself in that aspect of someone's life. So you don't have to be trans to understand it. You can. There's movies, there's blogs, there's loads of stuff. So sometimes it's just about taking the initiative. If you don't understand something, look it up. There's Google. There's so many different options where you can actually, if you're curious about something, you don't have to actually ask anyone. If you'd like to,
in this
ask
world
someone,
of information, there's no excuse. If you're interested, you will be able to find out.
Exactly. I mean, if you're interested and you want to know someone's specific story, that's absolutely a different story. Go and ask them, talk to them, and just be open with someone. We're not like, there's nothing wrong with us. We don't mind telling you about our experiences, and if you're just willing to ask, we're not going to go and obviously shout about it if we don't want to. But if someone's really genuinely curious and wants to know and wants to educate themselves, I'm happy to talk about things. I'm sure Nicola is as well.
I've certainly found this with, and I'll use the analogy of religion because I find it's something that's certainly been more prevalent in my life in the past, is that if I've had like Sikh friends or Muslim friends before and I think, I don't know anything about this individual, and I'm so bloody curious as to where did that originate, and, you know, what's that behaviour, and why do we do this, and why do we do that with our hair, and what's about skin, and you'd be astonished. I mean, you guys definitely wouldn't be astonished, but most people would be astonished how not offended or not remotely, they almost get a little bit excited to tell you about it, because there's so many subjects that people think are taboo. And this may be one of those subjects, LGBTQ, some people are scared to say the right thing, say the wrong thing, and as a result, they say nothing. And we subconsciously suppress the entire conversation. And we're constantly talking about this and mental health, about trying to lift that conversation and making the entire language that you use more acceptable and more open for people to just engage with, without fear of being, saying it wrong or saying something that's going to offend somebody.
Well, coming from an LGBTQ background, I was volunteering at the LGBT centre, helping trans people do like little workshops and stuff. And as Nick said, I've not been immersed much in the trans community either. And in that workshop, I accidentally called someone by the wrong gender. Okay. And I thought, oh my God, they're going to be so offended. And I came up to them afterwards and apologised, and I'm really sorry. They were absolutely fine about it. And I mean, this is coming from someone in the LGBTQ community making a mistake and just genuinely saying, I'm really sorry. And people don't take offence to that. If you make a genuine mistake and you're not trying to be offensive, and go and apologise and explain yourself afterwards, or ask them to explain why something was offensive.
Because it is a case of exposure, and I keep echoing back to it, but I use like my daughter as an example. My daughter's 4, no, it's a lie, she's 6, whoops. And, but she will say things, we're in the queue in the supermarket or something like that, and she'll turn around and she'll go, Daddy, that guy's got one leg. And I'll go, yeah, I know, baby, that man has got one leg. And he'll look and he'll have a little smirk, you know what I mean? He'll be like, how I lost my leg doing this. Because she's never been exposed, perhaps, to somebody that's got one leg. And as we get older, if we live in these really entrenched communities now, not necessarily intentionally, but, as a lot of people haven't travelled more than 10 or 15 miles from their home, they always associate with the same people, especially in a job like ours. If you're at the same watch or same station for 10 or 15 years, you may have been on a station that's never had somebody of a trans or lesbian or bisexual or gay on your watch, and then you're quote unquote confronted with that. Not that it's to be confronted with, but it can really scare people. And now it's not a 6-year-old that's being confronted with a new situation, and people perhaps feel they don't feel as open and as easy to talk about it. Are we breaking through that? Because we are always just as innocent as children. If you haven't experienced people, you haven't experienced people in today.
Yeah, I had that when I took my nephew to Silverstone, and our neighbour in our camper van offered to help. And my nephew went, "Oh, Auntie Nick, is that a man or a woman?" I said, "Well, are they a nice person?" "Yeah." "Does it matter?"
It doesn't matter.
"Oh, no, it doesn't." I says, "Well, it doesn't matter, if they're a man or a woman, if they're a nice person, and obviously don't speak to strangers and all that, I've got that bit in. But as long as they're a nice person, does it really matter?" And he was like, had a think, and he went, "Oh, no."
All these subconscious things that we push into there, and we don't realise we're doing it.
Exactly, and that just comes because I've got experience, and some parents don't, and it's hard to have those conversations initially, especially when you don't see it as an issue because you're not part. So it is hard to break down those barriers, but that's why schooling is getting so much better now with having LGBT plus, education, books, and all that. So it opens up the minds. So it's looking forward. And another way, when you said about how do we learn from people, another way is a good exercise, especially on stations. Is like saying, so if you come back from your 4 days off and you're getting together, try and talk about what you've done with your partner without saying her or him, and say they, them, because there's a lot of people that can't come out at work. Let's say, for example, a gay man, and they've got let's say a boyfriend at home or a husband, but they don't want anybody to know, and they say, "What's your weekend like? What did you do?" And you got to go, "So I went to the shops with my wife," and it's you constantly thinking about not tripping up, and then you've got to think, if they're constantly thinking about saying her or him, their distraction is going to play havoc on anything else, because it
can't be present.
Up.
You're so busy trying to protect yourself that you're limiting the amount of, like you say, intellectual capacity you can apply to things because you're petrified.
Yeah, exactly. So that's good little station things that you can do, or group activities where it makes you think, actually, this was really hard work. I've got a bit of a headache after doing that, and it just puts you in somebody else's shoes.
Yeah, but I quite like that. You have to be that sort of person who likes not playing word games, but is ultimately a word game. Because I certainly do it with all people, but certainly with clients and stuff. I'll say partner. I say, what have you and your partner been doing? The mistake I did make, which I didn't realise I was making, was, how's the family? Now, some people don't have a family, but again, we now get down to definitions of what you consider to be a family, because others, it's their close friends, it's their neighbour, it's their housemate who may have no genuine family style relationship to them. But yeah, those small changes in language can be absolutely huge.
Yeah, and they're the small steps that we're taking with education and getting more exposed out there. And that will come eventually. And I do believe there is clumsiness as well within language. And I think that needs to be took on board, that we're a changing society and some people are clumsy with their wording. It doesn't mean they mean offence. And it's just weighing it up and breaking down those barriers and educating. We can't expect everybody to get everything straight away. There's things that I don't know about certain communities, like we talk about religion and stuff, where, you know, I'd hope that I wasn't, but I could be clumsy with what I say, but I don't cause offence. And we get that as part of the LGBT community. And as a lesbian, I'm quite happy to have those conversations.
Is there an aspect that as we get a little bit older, there's an aspect that, or an expectation that we should know? Because as a child, we get forgiven for being curious because, we're young, we're not sure. Even if you're early on in a career, you don't know about something. But as people get a little bit older, some people have this pride thing where they think, damn, I should know this by now. And it makes it harder when these new changes are coming out for people to open up and say, I don't know anything about it. And certainly, do you see that not just at station level, but trying to integrate people at group, station, and higher levels of management? Because this is one of those things where it's behavioural. You know, it's not just right, wrong necessarily in policy. It's something that people have to be open to having a conversation about. And is it as prevalent at different levels within the service, or is the work that we're doing more based on the front line? Where do we see the biggest inequalities, if that makes sense?
So if we look at Leicestershire, let's just say there is not much diversity within management team in terms of the characteristics. Obviously there's diversity in terms of personalities and ways of managing, which is great. But because it's difficult now with COVID because everyone's working from home, but let's just say was back into COVID free kind of lifestyle. You would think that within the headquarters, although the senior management team aren't diverse, they've got such diverse people around them within headquarters, but that's still not being represented in terms of what we do in celebrating LGBT or having a network. So we've got an LGBT network and we put it out and we don't get many back, which means maybe there's not many LGBT people out there. But yeah, certainly at the shop floor, you see a lot more people out and about because you're going to incidents, you're going to training scenarios, you're swapping between different shift patterns, and you can understand there might be a bit of a barrier between senior management team and the as we call it, the shop floor, I suppose, firefighter, crew manager, watch manager level, even station manager potentially. But going forward, our chief's been really supportive and saying, look, you know, we're going out, we're here now, we're doing some LGBT stuff, and it needs to start from the top. So we've got this, we've got his support. So that's something that we now just need to start trickling down. And maybe when we're out of COVID, we can do some more work with senior management team. And I think a lot of people are using reverse mentoring now.
Okay.
So a firefighter, a crew manager, watch manager will mentor up to the higher ranks, because it might be that you've got a female or somebody with a disability saying, this is what you've got to think about when you're talking or when you're presenting, not in a, you have to do this, that, but in a mentoring kind of style, because they've obviously come through the ranks where it wasn't very diverse. Yeah, exactly. And we get that. So we just need, which we've got, a very open and supportive management to be able to get that through. Now,
is there a pressure at all, Cailin, with having to, we spoke at the beginning about the Q, about not wanting necessarily to identify, because in the great way we're giving it a greater amount of focus now. Does that, on the other side of the coin, if you will, because it's a double-edged sword in many ways, put pressure on people that have self-identified as having one of these characteristics we're referring to today, but they want it to be made a thing, you know, because I'm sure you guys must be like, look, we're reaching out. You reach out and go, hey, is there anybody, guys, girls, whatever, who want to be part of this and help support it? You obviously don't have to, but there'll be conversations, I'm sure, on station going, hey, John, you're a member of this, or you hold that characteristic, you should do it because it's important and it's really important. Do you ever find it where people are like, I don't want to have that sort of attention drawn to me, when it's been so hard for them perhaps at some point in their life to confront that and to come out to their close family and friends? They now feel like they're accepted in their career, in their profession that they love, to then be singled out again. I know that's something we need to keep doing to break the whole conversation down that I'm even talking about that, but do you get much pushback about that?
I think the worst, well, not the worst, but the most frustrating part about coming out as LGBT is the fact that you have to come out.
Yeah.
You don't ever have to come out.
No one's
as
ever
straight.
asked me. They assume I'm straight because I have a wife. But
exactly. But
it doesn't necessarily mean the case.
I think that's the hard thing about being LGBTQ, is because every new situation you have to kind of go, if they go, oh, what do you think about that? If you're out with some girls, obviously me and Nick, maybe not you. I mean, they say, oh, what do you think about that guy over there, he's quite good looking, and you kind of think, well, do I say something? Do I just go, oh yeah, he's good looking? Or it's quite a difficult situation for some people, depending on what your previous circumstances are.
Yeah.
Obviously, for myself, I'm quite open about it. I don't mind. I'll just tell people, but it is still an issue. Like even when I came out on station, people were like, "Oh, is she? Isn't she?"
Really?
Yeah. It wasn't in a horrible way. Just because people are curious, people want to know.
Yeah.
It's just a normal, natural thing. And I mean, I was fine with that. I told someone on station, and then everyone knew, and it was just like, that's just how it is because people talk. But it's that thing. If I was straight, no one would care.
Yeah. And no one would probably even ask you.
No.
I think I've only ever been asked once, and that was simply because I reference how attractive people are all over the place, and that often includes men. I'll have like a man crush Hugh Jackman or something like that, and people are like, they'll double take you, and then sometimes people ask if they don't really know you before, let's be gay. It's just one of those guys that likes attractive people.
Because you need to be gay to find somebody.
Yeah, I know, and I'm like,
don't you? Obviously,
no, proper like that, and man crush this, and I'll talk about all the different people that I just admire.
I think
my wife finds it hilarious because we kind of do it to each other.
That's a big thing though. Whereas if you were straight, you can't specify and say, oh, that person's good looking. What if you just think someone's good looking?
Yeah,
it's such a grey area. Like you don't necessarily have to be gay or LGBT to appreciate what someone looks like or appreciate something in someone.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. I mean, I'm married, and it doesn't matter man, woman, or whatever. But the things I find most attractive about people, I don't get too deep into this, but I admire people. And that's not necessarily their sex or their gender or their anything. But if somebody's, quirky or gregarious or just interesting or exciting or confident, and you go, damn, that's interesting, that's attractive, whether or not that's a physical attraction or a romantic attraction, because you're attracted to your friends because of their character. No, you don't ever necessarily want to sleep with them, but you are attracted to who they are. Yeah. This is why we grow cultures and stuff like that, people that have shared values, shared characteristics. And you can have that. And this is why it's such a strange conversation that we have around the want to identify to then not need to identify. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Which is strange.
Everyone's got their own place and their own opinions, their own thoughts, their own struggles and battles. And thankfully, I was having a conversation on the way up. I haven't had to have those battles within my family, so I've always been supported. So for me to be able to talk and speak to other people and maybe help other people just comes quite naturally to me because I've not had those initial. Obviously, it was scary, and but it wasn't something that my family didn't disown me. They didn't chuck me out. They supported me. So that makes me in a better position potentially to be able to come here and speak because I haven't had those bruises. I haven't got them scars still. And some people just want to forget about that. And I totally get that. And I appreciate where they come from. And everyone has their own right and opinion to do whatever they want.
Because they create like an anchor that if I tell someone my secret, I get hurt. Whether that be emotionally, physically for some people. Certainly when they're at school, they may have been physically attacked or bullied for coming out of that. And then that creates a really bad sort of loop where they go, if I tell someone this, then something bad happens. Yeah. And then we still hold those anchors when we're older. If I tell the watch, they may push me out. If I tell my colleagues, they may look at me differently. And all of this sort of stuff.
And you have those people, like you said before, that don't want to be labelled, which is brilliant. Like you don't want to be put in a box and be labelled. So why do I need to say anything? Because you should, take me as who I am. And so there's so many different opinions and ways of looking out there which is great because it brings more diversity. But we're in a situation where we want to talk about it and we want to educate. And that
I think we're
mean
at a time as well where it's a time to push hard. And I don't mean push hard, but what I mean is across the UK. Because of how I think people were employed in time periods and stuff like that, we're going through masses of recruitment across the UK. In like the last 5-year period, I know Cailin, you joined whole time a couple of years ago as well. And even the next 2 or 3 years, we're taking on a lot of people. And now the behaviours and the mindsets and the environment they walk into in that first sort of 18-month development period, they're going to be the characteristics that they hold so highly. So do you think this is more of a time now than ever? I mean, it's always been relevant, and whenever the conversation arrived, it was always going to be important to have it. But it's so crucial now that we get this message out because we're experiencing so much recruitment.
Yeah. I think it helps with that we have the have a go days that go for different characteristics. So obviously female only or everybody or LGBT. So that will automatically give somebody the opinion that they're open and transparent and saying, look, oh yeah, they're recognising this and they know that the barriers. So they've created a have a go day, especially for us, so we feel a bit more comfortable. Yeah. So that would always give a good first impression right from the when you first step into a fire station.
When we talk about inequalities in pay gaps and stuff like that, and it's been a conversation, predominantly more a man-woman conversation, history gone past. Are we ever going to get to a stage, do you feel we need to get to a stage where we are talking about pay gaps between sexual orientation? Do you think that's ever going to be a point?
Yeah, I suppose it all depends, doesn't it? Because hopefully the equality pay gap will be getting a lot obviously equal. We're not there yet, but that's where it brings into
How are we not there?
Well, we're not there because the private sector is very open, isn't it? The public sector is more by the book. You have pay scales.
Yeah.
All right. So like firefighter, you will have this no matter what your gender is. Private sector or consultants are going on potentially experience, and which a woman might have more experience than a man, but still get paid less. So that comes down to the private sector. I'm not very clued
but in the
on
public sector, I feel like we are there, or am I just naive?
Well, you say this, but if you look at it as in, let's say, predominantly all male, all right, the fire service.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so although we're getting the same pay, women across the board are getting paid less for doing that job because there's less women in it.
Yes.
If you look at it like,
by law of averages and proportions, yes.
And promotion-wise, there's not many women in high-ranked positions now.
Okay.
So why is there? Because it's a barrier for women to go up, or some services not doing
certainly
what they're doing.
still some cultural barriers.
Exactly. So are they not getting those positions, which then brings a pay gap in? So it depends how you look at it. If there's not many women going through the ranks, then why aren't they? LGBT people not going through ranks, why aren't they? Because they might want to, and that might be hindering their pay.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I'm just not sure. Because your sexuality can be, if somebody reaches a higher rank and then their sexuality changes. I've been married for 8 years. If I decide tomorrow I'm no longer in love with my wife, it's not because I'm my wife, because I'm no longer interested in women. It makes it really hard from a statistical perspective when we're talking about the metrics of pay gaps in terms of sexuality. I'm not sure how we would ever overcome that with some hard data of any form. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
That's a very vague and random question. Does that make sense?
I think
it'd be hard to ever know if we've made a difference with that.
If I'm looking at it from what you're saying, I think it could be that it depends on the individual. So a lot of the time people don't come out or stay married to someone because they're not sure. Yeah. And they're like the Q, they're questioning. Yeah. They're not sure, or they don't know who they are. Yeah. So they could have been gay but didn't know it. So technically then, yes, they are, and they may have gotten up. But a lot of people also don't come out in jobs. They'd rather just no one know their business. And a lot of people are very private about that. And then how do you...
That's what I mean.
How do you judge that?
So I think it's wonderful in terms of like women in the fire service, stuff like that we're recognising a deficit, if you will, and putting structures in place and support networks and opportunity days and mentoring and sponsoring and stuff like that, whereby we can look to approach that. But I feel like from the LGBTQ perspective, it is more of a state of awareness and comfort in having a conversation, and we're not necessarily at the point yet where we're trying to tackle anything beyond that.
People are, but us currently, we're not working in the data or that sort of kind of environment. But I'm sure there's definitely some LGBT charities and organisations and work streams out there that are looking at that, and there's probably get some answers if people are listening. If you are listening, get in touch. We're really interested. Like we're not expected to know everything, and every day is a learning day for us as well. So that's be an interesting topic.
So when we look at the History Month, as we're specifically talking about now, what have been the biggest game changers, firstly yourself, Nick, that you have seen both in your own career, but also in like the last 5 or 10 years culturally, that you have been most proud of, or you've seen change in terms of the efforts that have been made?
The things that I've seen is the more acceptance of getting involved in like LGBT History Month, from people asking about it. Yeah. Like not many people have normally asked me about it, but then we've been to a few stations today and they say, oh, so why are you giving us these rainbow laces? Oh, because it's in February, it's LGBT History Month. Oh, right. So what else are you doing? And they've actually, showing an interest, which people just go, oh yeah, I'll take them laces and I'll put them in that cupboard over there.
Free things.
Yeah. And rainbow flags seem to go missing, We'll get you a flag. But yeah, it's LGBT history is much bigger. Like talking about, for example, we had Holocaust Memorial Day, recognising the lesbians and the gay men back then, because it was normally LGB. Yeah. The T wasn't. It probably was recognised, but not in a forum like Lesbian and Gay Support the Miners' Strike as well. Yeah. So there was lots of such admirational people out there that have gone through so much for us to be able to sit here and be able to talk to you.
And
about
you think
this.
that any of the things that we speak about there, like the mining and like this, it's like that was a point in history that was great challenge and pain anyway. To do that for somebody who was already feeling ostracized and pushed out from their own community, it's like an additional challenge. But it's like doing something, but then the other person next to you is doing it with one leg. Or they're carrying something at the same time, i.e. this burden of regret or not feeling accepted or feeling ostracized. That must have been huge for people back then. There must have been so few people felt comfortable. How many people think live in silent lives then?
Massively, especially, you know, when we talk about when AIDS and HIV came out, you know, we got the
and
news
that community was almost labelled as like a problem for it. Like, oh, you're making it worse or this or that. And it's ridiculous.
It's like a gay man's disease, I think.
Yes,
they know what
it was,
called
isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually recognising what people have been through.
Yeah.
And you know, celebrating that we've got our lives here, that we're still fighting on behalf of the people that fought for us and themselves, and that we're still going ahead and trying to do things better for
it's a
humanity.
testimony in itself, because it could have gone the other way. It could have just been entirely pushed underground. And there will be places in the world, people, and I never would be, it's here to stay. Yeah, it's here to stay now in our Western world, but we're not trying to fight the global problem. But I'm very confident that there are places in the world where these conversations are definitely not happening. They are still struggling with men, female.
I was reading something that I was telling Nick about on the way over here, about in one of the Arabic countries where they found out someone was gay and they whipped him in front of people, 10 lashes. And I mean, that's today.
And you're like, really? And they're like, oh, yeah, absolutely, 100%. Yeah, these are places where women haven't even got rights anymore, let alone, crikey, you know, people of LGBTQ community aren't even getting a shout in. You know, they don't even speak up through fear of, like you say, physical violence.
Yeah. Well, in African countries, I mean, I'm obviously from South Africa, and in African countries, it's still illegal to be gay. I mean, you can be put in prison.
Is it really?
Yeah.
There you go, my absolute ignorance. Do you know what I mean? And you think, people moan about wanting to have a conversation on the fact we need to have it and how important it is, because with all fairness, in lots of things in the Western world, we are quite spoiled in how open and accepting we are. Yes, we still want to go further, but we forget how challenged it is. And you said yourself, Nick, that the people who have gone before us have really gone through some things. So for us to recognise and at least feel comfortable having the conversation isn't a lot to ask. It's not a lot for us, for people to listen and appreciate and support it.
Exactly. I know that the Fire Brigade Union as well, we went to Calais to the old concrete jungle, but they're not. It's not that at all. It's just cardboard boxes and tents. It's not even a set up place for refugees. And
Crikey.
you know, when people think, oh, they're just coming over here stealing our jobs, they want our benefits. Well, speak to them. You know, some people are really fleeing because they can't be who they are. We can be whoever we want to be, more than 9 times out of 10, and live a life. And you've got these people are coming over just to be a person who they want to be, and it's just opening your mind to that. And it was interesting and very, very sad to hear the stories that
it makes you feel guilty. I personally, for me, I can only speak for myself, feel guilty sometimes when you catch yourself in those moments being really bloody ungrateful for the, you know, this Western world that we live in, very affluent society with so many opportunities. You know, you can do so many things these days, and we forget because we haven't been in that situation. So it is really important when we talk about history and History Month to recognise those things, not to harp on about them and not to beat anybody over the head with them, but to go, let's appreciate what we have, and let's appreciate that we can even sit here and have this conversation freely, because it wasn't always the case.
Well, thankfully, our history is our history, but so our history
only if we choose it to be
present.
And
that is shocking.
We can quickly go backwards if we don't continue to make it a focus.
Well, I mean, we only got back to the miners' strike. I mean, that whole thing affected us massively because we supported the miners, or the LGBTQ community supported the miners. They then supported us when we went for getting LGBTQ history rights. So, and I mean, that was only in when was that, Nick? 1985 or 80?
I think the miners' strike was in the 80s, wasn't it? With Margaret Thatcher.
We're really bad people to be having this conversation.
but if you think about it, that's not that long ago.
No,
that's
it wasn't.
really not that long ago, and that's
really
rights. Human, decent, like just normal human rights to just be able to walk down the street and hold your girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever's hand.
People forget, and that's in my lifetime. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. I mean, it's not that long ago, and I think people need to realise that and realise that we might actually have come on quite a lot now, but it wasn't too long ago that we didn't have any rights. And I mean, that's one person making a difference. And when people say, "Oh, wearing these rainbow laces isn't going to make a difference," the person who organised all the miners' strikes was one guy. And he said, well, they have less than us. Imagine what that must be like. We know what it feels like. let's support them.
100%.
And the fact that he went and did that actually got us our rights.
Yeah.
And by helping someone else, like, they helped us back. I mean, you don't normally go around saying, oh, I'm going to help you so you can help me. But the fact that one person made a difference to so many people's lives then made a difference to our lives.
And it says to me that for people that are hearing this and listening to this and going, oh, it didn't really make a difference to me because I'm not LGBTQ and I don't necessarily know anybody that is. You may not think you do. But what we're talking about here is, morals and values. And if you think that it's the right thing to do, irrespective of, like you've said there, you're not going out to get any benefit. Oh, I'm going to help Cailin or Nick because of X, Y, Z, and it's going to benefit me in this way or the other. Do you believe it's the right thing to do? In which case, do so, and then you'll be astonished to see what people are going to do in return if they also agree that it's the right thing to do. It doesn't matter whether or not you think you're directly affected to it, because if you have got that mindset, then that's an incredibly selfish mindset to have as well. If you think there's no benefit for me, well, no, there's not. But I'm not being bullied right now, but I know what it's like to be bullied, and I'm not going to stand by idly and see something happen. And we should be treating this exactly the same.
Exactly. You just got to remember who's around you. You don't know who's your neighbour. You don't know who you're working with.
Nope.
If you're using derogatory language and you think it's a funny language, he's using let's just say people like kids do. Oh, that's so gay.
Yeah.
Putting that out there, and at the same time, I've been on station where they say, oh, people can come out. I'm a nice person, but then if you're using that language, that terminology, I wouldn't feel comfortable coming up to you and saying, I've got this big secret, because you're not giving that impression that you are approachable and you'll be able to be at work. So it's always got to be mindful about who you're working with and just treating people and using the right terminology that is fair.
I completely agree, but when we talk about language and words and stuff, I'm gonna offer a little caveat and see if you agree with it. I won't necessarily say be mindful of the people you're with. I'd say be interested. Be interested in the people that you're with. I mean, doesn't mean you've got to go out and pry all the questions out of people. But I feel sometimes, and this is again my own personal opinion, when I hear the word mindful, it worries me. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes I feel like, I need to be mindful, like I need to be careful, like I'm going to step on something and get my foot blown off. But if I'm interested in the people that I'm with, I automatically, like when I sit and have conversations like this, I'm picking up on social cues. I'm interested in how people react to the way you're talking, and effectively knowing your audience. So I say to people, be interested in people. Do you know what I mean? You don't have to be scared or worried or upset or anything like that, but certainly be interested and be interested. As
long as your interest doesn't force people out to come out when they don't want to.
Yes.
I think that's the difference between interested and mindful. Mindful at least gives you the chance that you say they might not want to talk about it, but I know that
I wouldn't be at a community event and go, Cailin, come on over. She can tell you all about it because Cailin's openly whatever. Do you know what I mean? That you wouldn't drag somebody into that situation in that respect. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. So what are we doing this month in terms of social myth? Obviously, we're here having this conversation, but I know some of the best stuff that comes out of this, we speak about the laces, is the creativity of this sort of sector and the natural interest and sort of playfulness that people of the LGBT community have. So what sort of cool stuff do we see going on either locally or nationally this month?
Yeah, so there'll be a lot of stuff going off in the fire service nationally, and they'll bring that out as the month starts. I know there's a lot of regional work that's going off, and they're planning at the minute, because normally it's like, yes, this is what we're doing, and it's like a celebration. And it's sometimes a sharing of ideas. I know that we've been sharing stuff with Northamptonshire, and they're interested in what we're doing. So we've got the rainbow laces out. It's a very visual thing, and people can wear them, and it makes you think, oh, I don't have to wear my uniform. Exactly.
I know. It feels like Friday at school, doesn't it? I'm like, yes.
No, but obviously they need to we're going to put the information, the education out on our intranet, so people understand why they're wearing it. They're not just wearing it because the NHS are rainbows now, so are we wearing this for the NHS? So it's like,
did anybody was there upset anything about that? Because rightfully so, we've supported a lot of the NHS work throughout this really challenging pandemic, but does the rainbow belong to anybody? Is that, I don't know.
No, the rainbow flag was invented, I think, by an LGBT person, but it doesn't mean that it can't be used anywhere else.
Nobody owns the rainbow.
No, but I think it did stir some questions in the LGBT community, because, for example, in the past, when I've tried to get people to make a rainbow out of, let's say, fire service equipment, it didn't get done. But then years to come, when it's NHS and the rainbow, they've done the same crew have done the rainbow, and it's like, did you not make it because you didn't have time, or you're busy, or because you didn't like
it?
So it starts making me question it, and it's a difficult one. And I've had conversations with crews, because that's the best way to tackle it. But it does make them think, oh yeah, why didn't we?
Even if it just provoked that thought,
for
them to go, well, actually, Nick, yeah, I don't know why we didn't, to be honest. Obviously, we're a bit busy, but honestly, on fire stations, if you want to do something, we are going to find time to do it. If it was Sunday and we had loads of incidents and we had to do the scrub, we had to do the risk. What's the chances we're still going to find time to have lunch? We're going to find time. So if you want to do something, if you think it's important enough, the why behind it's important, you're going to get it done. And it's great to see it happening in February. Yeah,
brilliant. Yeah, we got some because obviously it's COVID and lockdown, and there's not a lot of people can go to. We tried to find some good movie references to put on Service Matters.
Okay, what have we got?
I think we're not even just putting them on Service Matters, but we're actually challenging someone to watch at least one LGBT movie this month. I mean, that's one movie the whole month.
What we're watching on station, Cailin? What we got?
Pride. I love that movie.
Love it.
It's about the miners' strike, and it's just absolutely fantastic movie. Would recommend.
What other sort of stuff have we got going on?
So we've got some speakers coming in, hopefully to do some virtual kind of. I know, virtual. But it's
I
still
love going
good.
to talks.
Yeah,
and it sounds selfish, but I love being. I know we can't be in the room, and I'm sure that the content will still be as valuable. But when you do go to a seminar or something like that, being around people and feeling moved by it, because these are powerful stories.
You feel the vibe and the
you really do, yeah,
energy.
and especially from like an LGBT community or something like that, or even some religious context. I love going to talks like that because they're ultimately a story of challenge and overcoming a setback and standing up for something someone believes is right. And we see that in so many different ways. So who have we got coming in, or who have you associated with?
So our quality leads just trying to put them all together now. So because obviously everyone's going virtual and it's LGBT History Month, it's really hard to get people in. But hopefully now it's virtual. I
suppose in a way that kind of might open it up a little bit.
It might do, yeah. So our quality, we're sorting out the rainbow laces. Our quality lead, Deb, she's sorting out the speakers. So we should find out throughout the month who they are.
I have to speak to Deb. We've had some awesome ones on the podcast. Some of the guys and girls that have come on, it's really inspiring people. And it's like, wow. And again, like I've said, because we're in lockdown, you can do it globally. Yeah. You know, we've had speakers from Germany and France and some awesome people.
Yeah. And we're in the lucky position now, if it's virtual, if we do see something that comes out on a national platform, we can take that and at least bring it open up to Leicestershire. Yeah. And that's what we plan to do. See what else is about there. Anything that we can take still.
Yeah, we say that, but share it. It's there.
Exactly. Sharing knowledge. So that's what we're planning to do. It's really hard to get us all in the same room to be able to, obviously, because of the way it is, and everyone's working really hard at the minute to plan an event of such difference. Yeah. But we're getting there, and there'll be things. I think there's some station, like you said, you wanted to put a rainbow flag and do something. So things can be quite fluid as well. So if stations want to do some equipment out of rainbow,
I'll sign it out and you can have it back, just to make sure I don't steal a flag.
I'm just going to buy you one.
I just buy one. Oh, God,
buy you one, and you can
don't do that because everyone will want one. I'll give you it back anyway.
just another suggestion. Nick was saying about the speakers and stuff. So not everyone will want to listen to those and watch them. I think one of the main things for me is a lot of the time you think you know something, or you think you know about something. You don't know what you don't know. So watch it, give yourself some education, learn something new, take something on and think, you know what, this is 10 minutes out of my entire day or an hour out of my whole day, just to learn about someone else's struggles and see what they've been through and understand their point of view from their lifestyle.
And when you have experiences with people who are so used to people not understanding them and not caring, I love it when I Sophie is in the brigade that I'm in, she's a specialist in sign language, and I've loved learning stuff from her, so that when you do come across somebody who speaks sign language, who is so used to no one else speaking sign language and struggling to communicate with you, if you just know 4 things, and just to see the reaction in their face, and my hope is, from hearing you correctly, Cailin, that it will give you that sort of opening or that ability to connect with somebody that you never thought you could, because you didn't really understand it. Honestly, because of your own ignorance, you never thought to try and understand it. But it always astonishes me when I do, use a sign language example, how much it can build rapport with somebody so quickly, and a situation or a relationship can be made extremely better just from that simple desire to understand and connect with someone.
But also, is people don't always know what they don't know, is what I'm trying to say. Is you might not, like with sign language, at least you can sort of, that you need to use your hands and you know how to do it. And you know that's how people communicate. Whereas LGBTQ, you might not even know. Like, I didn't know saying something was wrong. And if you learn that, then you go, oh, well, next time maybe I won't say, oh, that's so gay.
I like the origins of words as well. People have told me about the origins of words in loads of different things. Lots of them come from nautical terms and stuff like that. But it's amazing when you hear the LGBTQ community, is that so many origins of those words, like I say, do have some really, really nasty negative connotations. And we use them so commonly now, we forget where they come from and forget what that might mean to someone that hears it.
Yeah. It's also what can help you at work as well. So something that I didn't really think about until somebody spoke to me about it is when you're going out in the community, or if someone's ringing you up, thinking about if somebody is not out and they're going through, let's say, domestic violence, and you've got two men living in a house, for example, and you might just presume are their mates, and then they're not. That person might not want to come out, so then can't ring for help. And they're, especially with coronavirus, they're stuck in that situation, that house, because they've got nowhere else to go. They might have been disowned from their family. They might not want to come out to anybody else because of that barrier. And then to ask for help because they're having these domestic violence issues will make them stay in that situation. So things like that, recognise, it's always educating yourself, recognising, you know, something doesn't feel right. If you went into a house with a man and woman, you might get them vibes, and it's transferring that into a same-sex,
detaching
same gender.
that subconscious assumption and almost prejudice of what a situation is and what you think. You would never even think to look at it in that way because you're operating out of that fixed mindset. That's a great way to spin it. I
think it's just important that LGBT plus doesn't just talk about LGBT plus. It's about BAME, LGBT, disability, LGBT, and it's understanding that it's not just white people that are LGBT plus. You know, we've got different cultural struggles. We talk about religion, race, countries that they might have come from in terms of it was illegal, and then they come into the country and still not really trusting people potentially, and it's opening up our minds. I know it's something that I've got to do into cultural differences, and that's something that we're going to target with LGBT history as well, because it's not just white LGBT history that has got us to here. It is a cultural history of people putting themselves. Imagine coming out as gay. Would be really difficult. Imagine back in the 60s, 70s, 50s, whatever, as a black man coming out as gay as well. The struggles that they will have faced.
Oh God,
And I can't even put myself in their shoes. So it's recognising that it's a whole diversity of a history.
We're talking a lot about LGBTQ, but when we talk about ignorance, and I'll be totally honest here, I have only recently become familiar with the term BAME and recognising that as its own sort of entity. So what is that, Cailin? Because that may be the first time a lot of people hear that word as well.
So it's black ethnic minorities. So it's basically mostly people who aren't white. They obviously, Nick explains it a lot better than I do, but it's just that they have different struggles to us. Like obviously me coming from Africa, I know about Ghana and how it's legal to be gay there. And so imagine coming as a refugee from Ghana, coming here. One, you're a refugee, so you have that struggle. Then you're gay as well. That's another struggle. And you're just trying to find a place where you can just live your life and just be who you are. I mean, we're lucky enough to be in England and
so lucky,
have all the freedoms that we have to be what we want, dress how we want, talk how we want. And these poor people have come here just seeking some asylum, and we reject them for all sorts of different reasons. So I think
they feel petrified, even just making the incredible journey that they've made to then arrive here and be set back by our sheer ignorance is a really upsetting thing, I suppose.
Yeah, just to add on when Cailin said about being lucky, we shouldn't have to feel that we're lucky to be in the position we are. It should just be the way. And we just need to make sure that we're not we don't have to show appreciation for being accepted, because we should get it anyway.
Yes.
So it's like it's noticing that, if you watched the Dagenham film, what's it, the Workers of Dagenham, the women's film, I can't remember what it is. It's the tip of my tongue. As when the husband came out and says, well, I don't even hit you. You're lucky I don't hit you. She went, no, I'm not lucky you don't hit me. That's just the way that you don't. Because back then, it wasn't, domestic violence wasn't really up there. And that's the same. She's not lucky not to be hit. She shouldn't be hit in the first place. And that's the same for us. We shouldn't have to feel appreciation.
It's an interesting, I want to say spin, but it is. You just look at it in a different frame and think, no, this should be the way.
Yeah, we're not lucky to be able to be who we are. That's the way it should be.
Oh, thank God I'm not judged. You shouldn't be judged.
Yeah, exactly. and that's it. Yeah.
Awesome.
Last thing is, don't forget about the challenge. So watch one LGBTQ History Month movie of your choice. You can literally Google it on Prime. Look on Prime. There is an LGBTQ section.
Is it really?
I'm fairly sure.
And on Netflix there is.
And on Netflix.
I'm going to be really interested to see what's in there.
Obviously read the movie before you watch it, because some of them are not very good. So there are some really, really good ones. No, there's some really bad ones that are just nonsense, but there's some really, really good ones, like, as I said, like Pride. I mean,
I would be fascinated to see what list is in there, because I don't think we're going to have that conversation, but I very nearly there went, oh, I wonder if such and such is in there, such is in there, and then accidentally be offended somebody by saying, why do you think that's in there? And I'm like, I just thought it was a really cool film.
Yeah, but we had this conversation because we in the van the way up thinking, what films can we put out, because some people might feel a bit uncomfortable with certain scenes.
Because if I say like, I love this film, and you say that's a great film in the LGBTQ, and then I'm like, oh god, no, I didn't think I was that sort of person. And you're like, what are you on about?
Well, yeah, it's like if a heterosexual sex scene came out, like that's just a sex scene. So if you saw a homosexual or a gay, lesbian, trans, whatever, love scene, sex scene, whichever you want to call it,
it's still a sex scene.
It's still a sex scene, and that's it. It's just embracing
it's part of the story
that.
arc.
It's just it's just biology, and it's just love and passion.
The worst bit is that was in the papers. What I'm saying to you is there was a tweet where someone had said, there was this straight love scene. Oh, it was beautiful. It was art. And someone had put a gay love scene, and it was disgusting and sinful. And those were the words that we used. So it was all, the gay side was negative, LGBTQ side was negative, and the other side was art and artistic and all that. And it was a very similar scene.
I'm going to get on there and have a look at this list.
Do it.
I probably think that the irony would be me and my wife probably watching half of them already anyway, which would be great and fantastic. But the amount of times me and my wife will say about watching a film, and I'll list off several things, and she'll be like, oh, I can't watch an action film or something like that. And I'm like, I really like this one. This is where I get it from people all the time.
Make her watch Pride, because my mom's exactly the same. Yeah. She was like,
it's surprising what film she hasn't seen.
We need to watch action films. I said, Mom, just watch this movie with me. And Mom was like, oh, that's fantastic. I loved it. Yeah. Brilliant movie.
I rarely ever watch TV, but I love films. I'm a proper like movie buff. I'm a bit abstract, but my wife had never watched Mary Poppins. Watched Mary Poppins for the last time. I was like, oh my goodness, I feel for your upbringing. Come on, where was Mary Poppins in this upbringing? Awesome. So what's the best way for people that have just first hearing about LGBTQ or the first time they've heard about BAME, how can they connect with either yourselves or a national organisation and give their support or get interested in some of the things we've spoken about today?
Yeah, so locally we've got the LGBT Network Forum, so people can ask us because we're on there. If there's any advice, where to go. You've got charity centres, and now because we live in a virtual world, you can literally go onto the internet, find any speeches or any workshops or any online classes that they've got coming up that are free, that you can go in and sign in and have that. You've even got at work, you have quality inclusion officers. Just ask them to come in and have a chat, and then you can have those open conversations in a safe place.
But if you didn't want to talk to people at work, there's also the LGBT Leicestershire charity that you can just go and speak to. They're happy to talk to people. You can email them, you can talk to them online. It depends how comfortable you as a person are speaking to people at work. Yeah. So if you're
but it's great to see that even if you're not, those and people from equally from other brigades, do you know what I mean? If they wanted to reach out across different service or across a different brigade, they can do so. Everybody's so contactable now.
You've also got, if you're part of a union, they always have equality sections as well. So that's always a good way because it's not directly towards your work. You can have a strand off that understands the environment you're working in, but hasn't got that direct link, and that's a really good way to go.
That's a great way to do it. Cailin, Nick, thank you very much for coming on the podcast today. That's the compressor that's just gone off next door. That's great time.
I thought that was good. I thought it was your music going to come in.
No, I'm not that clever at it. Thanks for coming on the podcast today, girls. I really appreciate your time, and we will have this out soon. Everything will be in the show notes with the links to contacting us, with the list of the films. We'll try and stick 3 or 4 in there of our favourites. Pride will definitely be amongst it, and I think it's great what you're doing, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you for having us on.
See you soon.
Cheers, Pete.
Well, there we have it, folks. LGBTQ month 2021. It is February. Let's get out there. Let's look at some of them films. I'm really curious to see some of the ones that are up there. I know that wasn't necessarily the biggest takeaway, but it's certainly something that left me thinking at the end of the conversation. A big one for me as well was language. You know, when Nick spoke about the different words that we use and our interpretations of what they mean versus other people's upbringing and their sort of experiences and what they might mean to other people. I love the way that you can reframe things and sort of rephrase them to try and give a different focus, a different outcome. Certainly got me thinking about the words that I use, obviously as part of the podcast. I engage in these conversations on a daily basis, and it's so important for me to know that I'm able to convey things in a manner that is open and inclusive to everybody, so that so many people can engage with some of the incredible guests, and Cailin and Nick have been a perfect example of that. thank them both so much for taking time out of their busy life to be here with me and have a conversation for everybody's benefit, to give us some really valuable insights into what is a very important subject and is being celebrated this February as part of LGBTQ month. And finally, and most importantly, of course, I thank you. No matter your origin, your ethnicity, your sexuality, no matter who you are welcome here at the Firefighters Podcast. And so long as we can remain inclusive and curious about each other, I know that will lead to a stronger and stronger frontline service. Thank you so much for coming back. Thank you for listening in. We look forward to seeing you again real soon, and I mean real soon, on the Firefighters Podcast.